You are on HOA Neighbor Wars. She tried to close the file by deleting the trail. A certified envelope sat on my doormat, and before I could even read the return address, a voice cut through the evening air like a blade. Do not move, you are in violation right now. I looked up, and there she was. Melissa Thompson, the Magnolia Heights Homeowners Association Fines and Enforcement Coordinator, stood at the edge of my driveway with her phone out like a weapon. Her pink jacket caught the last of the daylight, and her gray baseball cap was pulled low enough that I could see the hard set of her jaw. She was not here to chat. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized, she said, and her voice had that tight, clipped edge that meant she had been rehearsing this. You owe us $750, and if you do not pay by Friday, we are moving forward with collections. I glanced down at the envelope in my hand. It was thick, official, and stamped with a tracking label. I had not opened it yet, but I already knew this was going to be a problem. I work as a commercial photographer, which means I haul gear all over Fort Collins for shoots, and my schedule is tight. My car is needed for a strict work shift, and a tow threat could get me fired. I did not have time for this. What violation? I said. Melissa did not blink. Your fence extension from last April. It was never approved, and you ignored the compliance notice. The file was reopened this week, and the fees are compounding daily. I stared at her. I never built a fence extension. She smiled, and it was not friendly. Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This was not just a mistake. This was deliberate. I tore open the envelope right there on the porch. Inside was a printed notice, dated 3 days ago, claiming that a violation notice had been issued in April of last year, and that I had failed to respond. The fine had ballooned from an initial $200 to $750 with late fees and administrative charges. But here was the problem. I never received a notice in April. I never built a fence extension. And the signature at the bottom of the compliance form did not look like mine. It looked like someone had traced it badly. I held up the paper. This is not my signature, I said. Melissa crossed her arms. That is your property. That is your responsibility. If you want to dispute it, you can file an appeal, but the fees are still due. She turned on her heel and walked away, and I heard her mutter something about people who think they are above the rules. I stood there for a long moment staring at the paper. Then I pulled out my phone and took a picture of every page. I had a bad feeling about this, and I was going to need proof of everything. The next morning, I called my friend Jake, who works in IT and has a knack for verifying metadata and timestamps. I sent him the scans of the notice, and he called me back within an hour. This is weird, he said. The PDF creation date is from last week, not April. Someone backdated this. I felt my jaw tighten. Can you prove that? He laughed. I already did. I will send you the metadata report. It is a smoking gun. I thanked him and hung up. Then I drove to the Magnolia Heights community office, a squat brick building near the neighborhood entrance with a faded sign and a row of potted plants that looked like they had seen better days. Inside, the receptionist gave me a tired smile and asked how she could help. I need to see my compliance file, I said. Specifically, anything related to a fence violation from last April. She typed into her computer, frowned, and shook her head. I am not seeing anything from April. There is a recent entry from this week, but that is it. I leaned forward. Can I get a copy of the file? She hesitated. You will need to submit a formal records request. That can take up to 10 business days. I felt the frustration building. I need it sooner. My car is at risk, and they are threatening to tow. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Between you and me, Melissa has been reopening old files a lot lately. I do not know why, but it has been causing a lot of confusion. I nodded slowly. That was the second clue. Someone was reopening files that should have stayed closed. I left the office and sat in my car for a minute, trying to think. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a neighbor I barely knew, a guy named Marcus who lived 2 streets over. He had attached a photo with the message, "Found this in my mailbox last year. Thought you might want to see it." I opened the photo, and my stomach dropped. It was a compliance notice, identical to mine. Same format, same wording, same tracking label design. But the date was different. Marcus had received his in June, and it accused him of an unapproved deck stain. He had paid the fine, he said, because he did not want the hassle. But looking back, he was not sure the deck stain was ever a real issue. I zoomed in on the signature line. It was the same shaky traced signature that I had seen on my notice. This was not a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. I drove home and spent the next 2 hours digging through my email and photo archives. I found a doorbell camera clip from April, the month Melissa claimed I had been notified. I scrubbed through the footage day by day, and there was no compliance notice delivery. No certified mail. No hand delivery. Nothing. I saved the clip to a thumb drive and made 3 backup copies. Then I started looking into Melissa Thompson. A quick search of the Magnolia Heights public meeting minutes showed that she had been appointed as Fines and Enforcement Coordinator 2 years ago, right after a vote to increase compliance fees. The minutes noted that Melissa had promised to improve collections and reduce delinquencies. She had delivered on that promise. Collections were up 40%. But now I was starting to wonder where that money had actually gone. That evening, I tried to upload my records request and my rebuttal documents to the HOA portal. I filled out the form, attached the metadata report from Jake, attached the doorbell camera clip, and hit submit. The page spun for a second, then gave me an error message: upload failed. Please try again later. I refreshed and tried again. Same error. I tried a third time, and this time the portal logged me out entirely. When I tried to log back in, it said my account was locked pending administrative review. I stared at the screen, feeling the anger rise. This was not a coincidence. Someone had locked me out right when I was about to submit proof. I grabbed my phone and called the management company that ran the portal. The customer service rep put me on hold for 10 minutes, then came back and said my account had been flagged for suspicious activity and that I would need to contact the HOA board directly to resolve it. I asked who had flagged it. She said she could not tell me. I hung up and immediately texted Jake. My portal uploads mysteriously fail right when the deadline hits, and now my account is locked. He replied within seconds. That is not a glitch. That is manual intervention. Someone is blocking you. The next afternoon, Melissa showed up at my house again. This time, she had a clipboard and a bright pink highlighter that she waved like a weapon. She did not knock. She just stood in my driveway and called my name until I came outside. I have been informed that you are attempting to dispute your fees without following proper procedure, she said. That is a secondary violation. I am adding an additional $200 administrative processing fee. I stared at her. I tried to follow procedure. Your portal locked me out. She shrugged. That is not my problem. You had access until you violated the terms of service. I took a slow breath. What terms of service? She flipped through the papers on her clipboard, ran the highlighter across a line, and held it up. No readable text was visible, but she tapped it like it was gospel. Right here. Frivolous appeals result in account suspension. I felt my jaw clench. I have proof that the original notice was backdated. I have metadata showing it was created last week, not last April. I have doorbell camera footage showing no notice was ever delivered. And I have a neighbor who received an identical fake notice. Her face did not change. Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth. There it was again. That line. I let her think I was cornered, because my trump card needed her to overreach. I nodded slowly. Okay. What do I need to do to resolve this? She smiled, and it was smug. Pay the fees by Friday, or we move forward with collections and a lien. And if you want to keep your car, I suggest you comply. A delivery driver had pulled up at the curb to drop off a package for my neighbor, and he was standing there with the box in his hands, clearly stuck and watching the chaos unfold. He glanced at me, then at Melissa, then back at me. His face said everything. That night, I called Jake and told him what had happened. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You need to go straight to the city. If she is fabricating notices and backdating enforcement actions, that is fraud. And if she is locking you out of the portal to cover it up, that is witness tampering." I nodded. I was thinking the same thing. He sent me a full forensic report on the PDF metadata, complete with screenshots and timestamps. Then he helped me pull the audit logs from my portal account, showing exactly when my access had been revoked and by whom. It was Melissa. She had flagged my account herself. The next morning, I drove to the Fort Collins city permit counter, the place where all HOA rule changes and enforcement actions had to be filed if they involved structural changes or common property. The clerk at the counter was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, and she looked up when I approached. "I need to check if the Magnolia Heights HOA filed a fence compliance action against my property in April of last year," I said. She typed into her system, scrolled, and shook her head. "Nothing on file. Do you have documentation?" I handed her the fake notice and Jake's metadata report. She read through it, and her eyebrows went up. "This was never filed with us. If it involves structural compliance, it has to be." I nodded. That is what I thought. She leaned forward and lowered her voice. "You should file a formal complaint. If someone is fabricating enforcement notices, that is a big deal." I thanked her and asked if I could get a stamped letter confirming that no action had been filed. She printed it on the spot and handed it to me with a sympathetic look. "Good luck." I walked out of that building with a piece of paper that said Melissa's entire case was fake. But I was not done. I needed to know how deep this went. I spent the next 2 days calling every neighbor I could find who had paid an HOA fine in the last 2 years. Most of them did not want to talk, but a few did. One woman told me she had been fined for an unapproved mailbox repaint that she swore she had never done. Another man said he had been charged for a noise violation during a week when he was out of town. Every single one of them had the same story: a sudden notice, a vague accusation, and pressure to pay quickly or face escalating fees. And every single one of them had paid, because they did not want the hassle. I compiled a list of names, dates, and amounts. Then I cross-referenced it with the public meeting minutes. The numbers did not match. The HOA had collected over $15,000 in compliance fees in the last 2 years. But the budget reports only showed about $8,000 in recorded income. That meant someone was pocketing the difference. Friday arrived, and so did the deadline. I did not pay the fees. Instead, I showed up at the Magnolia Heights community office at 9 in the morning with a thick binder full of printed evidence, the metadata report, the doorbell camera screenshots, the city permit letter, the neighbor statements, and a highlighted copy of the budget discrepancies. I walked up to the receptionist and said I needed to speak to someone on the board immediately. She made a call, and 5 minutes later, the board president walked in. His name was Derek, and he looked tired. He listened to my summary, flipped through the binder, and his face went pale. "This is serious," he said. "If this is accurate, we need to bring in the management company for an audit." I nodded. "I think you do. And I think you need to suspend Melissa's access to the portal until the audit is done." He agreed, and right then and there he made the call. If you are enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA drama. Melissa found out about the suspension within an hour. She showed up at my house that afternoon, and this time she was not alone. She had brought another board member, a quiet guy named Tim, who looked like he wished he was anywhere else. Melissa was furious. "You are interfering with official HOA business," she said. "You are going to regret this." I stayed calm. I just want the truth. If the fees are legitimate, the audit will prove it. If they are not, then we all deserve to know. She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to something sharp and mean. "You do not get to question me. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized. I have the minutes. I have the records. You have nothing." I pulled out my phone and held it up so she could see the screen. I had the doorbell camera clip queued up, ready to play. I also had Jake's metadata report open in another tab, and I had the city permit letter folded in my pocket. I said, "I have proof that you backdated the notice. I have proof that it was never filed with the city. I have proof that you locked my portal account to stop me from submitting evidence. And I have statements from other neighbors who paid fake fines. So no, Melissa, you do not have the records. You have a problem." Tim looked at Melissa, then at me, then back at Melissa. He said, "Melissa, if there is an audit, you need to cooperate." She whirled on him. "You are taking his side." He shook his head. "I am taking the HOA's side. If we have been collecting fees that were not legitimate, we need to fix it." She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. I am not paying the fees, and I am filing a formal complaint with the management company and the city. If you want to fight this, go ahead. But every piece of evidence I have is time-stamped, verified, and backed up. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Tim stayed behind for a second. He looked at me and said, "Thank you. This has been going on longer than I realized." The audit took 3 weeks. During that time, I kept my head down and documented everything. Every email, every encounter, every piece of mail. I also kept my car parked in a friend's driveway, because I did not trust Melissa not to call a tow company out of spite. Jake helped me pull more portal logs, and we found something interesting. Melissa had deleted records. Not just my records. She had deleted old compliance files for at least 6 other properties. All of them cases where neighbors had disputed the fines. The audit team found the deleted files in a backup server, and when they cross-referenced them with the payment records, the pattern became clear. Melissa had been creating fake violations, pressuring residents to pay quickly, and then deleting the records so there was no paper trail. The fees went into the HOA account, but she was also skimming a percentage by inflating administrative charges that never got recorded in the budget. It was not a huge amount per incident, but over 2 years, it added up to thousands of dollars. The board called an emergency meeting. I was invited to attend as a witness. The meeting was held in a cramped conference room at the community office, and the air was thick with tension. Derek sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 other board members and a representative from the management company. Melissa was there too, sitting across from me with her arms crossed and her face set in a hard mask. Derek started by summarizing the audit findings. Then he turned to Melissa. "Do you have anything to say?" She did not hesitate. "This is a witch hunt." He made false accusations because he did not want to pay a legitimate fine. The rest of this is just noise. Derek slid a printed packet across the table. It was the deleted portal logs. These show that you manually removed compliance records after residents disputed them. Can you explain that? She glanced at the packet, and for the first time, I saw her confidence crack. Those were clerical errors. I was consolidating files. The management company rep cleared his throat. We reviewed the consolidation process. None of these deletions followed protocol. And we found discrepancies in the fee allocations. You recorded administrative charges that do not appear in the budget. Melissa's face went red. You are accusing me of theft. I am a volunteer. I spend hours every week keeping this neighborhood in order. I leaned forward. You also locked my portal account to stop me from submitting evidence, and you backdated a compliance notice to justify a fake fine. I have the metadata to prove it. She turned on me, and her voice was loud enough to echo. Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth. Derek held up a hand. Melissa, that is enough. We have reviewed the evidence. The audit shows a clear pattern of fabricated violations and improper fee collection. We are recommending that the board remove you from your role as fines and enforcement coordinator, effective immediately. We are also recommending that the HOA refund the fines and fees tied to the scheme, and that we file a formal complaint with the county. Melissa stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. You are making a mistake. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized. Derek did not blink. You are dismissed. She grabbed her phone and her clipboard and walked out, slamming the door behind her. After the meeting, Derek pulled me aside. I want to apologize, he said. We should have caught this sooner. I nodded. Just make sure it does not happen again. He promised they would implement new checks and balances, including a third-party review of all compliance actions and a public audit log that residents could access. It was not perfect, but it was a start. The management company also reached out to every resident who had paid a suspicious fine in the last 2 years and offered full refunds. Most of them took it. A few decided to file their own complaints. Melissa tried to fight the decision, but the evidence was overwhelming. The board voted unanimously to remove her from the committee and to revoke her admin access to the portal. She lost her committee role immediately, and she could no longer delete portal records or lock resident accounts. The county opened an investigation into the fee discrepancies, and the last I heard, Melissa was facing a civil suit from the management company for breach of fiduciary duty. As for me, I got my refund. $750 plus an apology letter from the board. I also got a formal acknowledgement that the original violation notice was fraudulent and that my compliance record was clean. But the best part, the part that still makes me smile, was what happened at the city permit counter. A week after the board meeting, I went back to file a final records request. The same clerk was there, and when she saw me, she grinned. I heard what happened, she said. That HOA coordinator tried to come in here last week and file a complaint against you. She wanted us to issue a city violation for your fence. I raised an eyebrow. What did you tell her? The clerk laughed. I told her we had already reviewed the case and that no violation existed. Then I told her that filing a false report with the city is a misdemeanor. She left pretty fast after that. I thanked the clerk and walked out into the afternoon sun, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The fallout took a few more weeks to settle. The board implemented new rules requiring all compliance actions to be reviewed by at least 2 board members before any fees were assessed. They also hired an independent auditor to review the HOA finances every quarter. And they installed a new portal system with transparent audit logs that residents could check at any time. Melissa's name quietly disappeared from the HOA website and the neighborhood newsletter. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved out of Magnolia Heights entirely, though I never confirmed it. I did not care. She was gone, and that was enough. The thick envelope with the tracking label ended up in my evidence binder along with every other piece of paper from the case. I kept it all in a fireproof safe, just in case, but I did not think I would need it again. The cold case was closed. A few months later, I was sitting on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset and thinking about how close I had come to just paying the fees and moving on. If I had done that, Melissa would still be running her scheme, and who knows how many more neighbors would have been hit. But I did not pay. I fought, and I won. My phone buzzed, and it was a text from Marcus, the neighbor who had sent me that first photo. He said, "Thanks for doing what we were all too scared to do. You are a legend." I smiled and took another sip of my beer. I was not a legend. I was just a guy who got mad enough to dig. And sometimes, that is all it takes. The best part of the whole thing, the part that still cracks me up when I think about it, was the funny karma moment. Remember how Melissa kept saying, "Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth"? Well, it turned out that her own minutes were what buried her. The audit team pulled the official meeting minutes from the last 2 years, the ones Melissa had personally typed and submitted. In those minutes, she had documented every single compliance action, including the ones she later deleted from the portal. She had done it to make herself look efficient and thorough. But when the auditors cross-referenced the minutes against the portal logs and the payment records, they found dozens of entries that did not match. Violations that were recorded in the minutes but never actually filed. Fees that were listed in the minutes but never appeared in the budget. And best of all, her own handwritten notes in the margin of one meeting packet, where she had calculated how much extra revenue she could generate by inflating administrative charges. She had kept the evidence of her own scheme, thinking it would protect her. Instead, it was the smoking gun that proved everything. Her own minutes became the proof of her lies, and that poetic justice was better than anything I could have planned. Jake called me a few days after the audit report went public. He was laughing so hard he could barely talk. "Dude," he said, "she literally documented her own fraud. Who does that?" I laughed too. Someone who thought they were untouchable. He asked if I was going to celebrate, and I told him I already had. I had taken my refund check, deposited it, and used part of it to buy a new camera lens for work. The rest went into my kids' college fund, because that was the whole point of all this. I was trying to keep my kids' routine stable, and the HOA kept targeting school pickup times with threats and harassment. But now the harassment was over, and the routine was safe. That was the real win. The HOA held a follow-up meeting a month later, and this time it was open to all residents. The turnout was huge. People wanted to know what had happened, and they wanted reassurance that it would not happen again. Derek stood at the front of the room and gave a full accounting of the audit findings, the refunds, and the new safeguards. Then he opened the floor for questions. One woman asked if Melissa would face criminal charges. Derek said the county was still investigating, but that the board had referred the case to the district attorney. Another man asked if the board would resign over the scandal. Derek said no, but that they were implementing term limits and recall procedures so that residents would have more power to hold the board accountable. I stayed quiet through most of the meeting, but at the end, Derek called me up to the front. He thanked me publicly for bringing the issue to light and for providing the evidence that made the audit possible. The room applauded, and I felt my face go red. I am not great with public attention, but it felt good to know that people understood what had happened. After the meeting, a dozen neighbors came up to shake my hand and thank me. A few of them admitted that they had also been hit with suspicious fines, but had been too scared to fight back. I told them all the same thing: if it happens again, do not pay. Dig. Ask questions. Demand proof. And if you need help, call me. The months that followed were quiet. The new compliance system worked. Violations were reviewed by 2 board members before any fees were assessed, and every action was logged publicly. The portal stayed online, and my account stayed active. I even got a formal letter from the management company apologizing for the lockout and confirming that my access had been restored with full admin transparency. I framed that letter and hung it in my office, right next to my camera gear. It was a reminder that systems can be fixed, but only if people are willing to fight for it. Melissa never came back. I do not know where she went, and I do not care. The important thing was that the scheme was over. The HOA refunded the fines and fees tied to the scheme, and the management audit exposed the pattern of fake violations and deleted records. Karen lost her committee role immediately, and her admin access was revoked. The payback came through a management audit that exposed the pattern, and it was clean, legal, and devastating. No vandalism, no fraud, just the truth, laid out in black and white for everyone to see. And the truth was enough. Looking back, I realize how close I came to just walking away. $750 is not a small amount, but it is not life-ruining either. I could have paid it and moved on. But something about the way Melissa smiled when she handed me that fake notice. The way she said, "Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth." It made me dig deeper. And I am glad I did. Because it was not just about me. It was about every neighbor who had been pressured into paying a fake fine. It was about every resident who had been told they were wrong and that the HOA was always right. It was about breaking that cycle and proving that no one is above accountability, not even the person who claims to keep the neighborhood civilized. The cold case was closed, and the culprit was caught. And I did it with nothing but a camera, a metadata report, and the willingness to ask questions. Sometimes, that is all it takes. Thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.